It was the second week of February, this same year. I should explain a little about myself first. I work as an instructor, the kind that travels. Every few months I find myself living in a different country, and recently, I was staying somewhere I'm actually still living in now. In fact, I'm sitting in the very same flat right now as I tell you this story. The building has what they call studio apartments here, small, simple, efficient one-room setups. I'd been living in mine for almost a year by then. My room was on the 13th floor, but I'd made some good friends on the 11th floor of the same building. We'd share meals, have coffee together, sit out on the terrace and talk for hours. One of these friends had a friend of her own who needed somewhere to stay for about a week. She was moving out of the 11th floor flat to head back to Indonesia, but had a week left before her flight, and the two women sharing that studio asked if she could stay with me instead, just temporarily, just to make things easier for everyone. I said it was no problem. I was alone, my work schedule was light that week, and it seemed simple enough. So the woman moved into my room. Her name was Giya, Indonesian, soft-spoken, on her way home after finishing her contract here. I gave her the bed and took the spare mattress for myself, the one I usually kept around for when my brother or sister visited. She had a new job to get up for in the mornings, so most nights she'd be asleep by 10 while I stayed up doing the usual things, watching something, scrolling through my phone, talking to friends. It was around the second night that something first felt strange. I was sitting on the mattress with my laptop, and around 1 a.m. she began making sounds, forced, strange, almost like she was struggling to breathe. She'd mentioned earlier that she had asthma, so my first thought was that she might be having an attack. I turned on the lamp, went over, and gently shook her shoulder. She sat up suddenly, eyes wide, then closed them again and went quiet. I gave her some water and told her to relax. I assumed it was sleep paralysis, something physical, nothing more. She drifted back off a few minutes later. This happened 2 more times over the following nights. By the 5th night, we talked about leaving a lamp on, thinking maybe darkness was triggering whatever this was, though she insisted she actually slept better in the dark. We left it as it was. Then came the 5th night itself. I was on my laptop again, reading something, when I noticed a faint rustling sound coming from her side of the room. I glanced over, nothing unusual, just her shifting in her sleep, I assumed. I went back to what I was doing. The sound came again. I looked again. This happened 3 or 4 times, my attention pulled back and forth, until eventually I set the laptop aside. There was a wall beside the bed, a plain, soft silver gray paint, nothing special about it. But as I looked toward where she lay, I noticed something forming against that wall. A shadow, tall, stretching from near the ceiling downward. I glanced at it once and dismissed it. I closed my laptop, drank some water, and turned on my phone's flashlight, dimmed down low so I wouldn't wake her, just to find the water bottle I'd left somewhere nearby. When I set the phone down again, my eyes went back to the wall. The first time, I told myself it was just my vision playing tricks. But the second time I looked, it was unmistakably clear, there was something tall standing there. The room was almost completely dark, no lights on anywhere, the laptop screen gone black, and yet this thing was darker still than the darkness around it. It rose from somewhere near the ceiling, and its shape reminded me of someone wrapped in a long, flowing burqa-like garment, except far too tall to be human. I forced myself to look directly at it. Where its eyes should have been, I saw a strange ultra-red glow, but it was as if a veil hung in front of even that, muting it. 2 eyes, definitely, but veiled, with that deep red light barely breaking through the black covering them. And then, nothing. My memory simply stops there. I don't remember falling asleep, don't remember closing my eyes, don't remember anything after that moment of looking directly at it. I only know what came before, the water, the flashlight, that final look at the thing in the corner. The next morning I woke up much later than usual. Giya had already left for work, I had no shift that day. I called my father, not because I'd decided anything was wrong, but because I'd been through something similar years before, something I thought I'd fully recovered from. I worried this might be a relapse. He didn't pick up immediately, but called back about 2 hours later. I told him everything. He laughed, just slightly, before saying something that surprised me: this wasn't my problem at all. It belonged to the woman who'd come to stay in my room. I argued, I'd seen it myself, with my own eyes, while she slept peacefully through it. But he was firm. He told me to recite certain verses he'd once given me, exactly as instructed, and to direct the recitation toward her as well, toward her side of the room. That was all he said. In a strange way, it was a relief. Whatever this was, it apparently wasn't tied to me. When Giya came back that evening, I asked if I could talk to her about something. She sat down beside me, and I asked gently whether she experienced sleep paralysis often. She said no, that sometimes she felt like she couldn't breathe, something related to her asthma, nothing more. I told her, carefully, that something strange had happened the night before, something I couldn't quite explain, maybe a dream, maybe not. I started describing the entity. I hadn't even finished describing its eyes when she stood up abruptly, grabbed her bag, and walked out the door without a word. She went straight down to her friend's room on the 11th floor. I felt awful. I tried calling my father again, no answer. A short while later, I got a call from one of Giya's friends, inviting me down for lunch, since none of us had eaten yet. I went, partly to apologize if I'd upset her, partly out of guilt for scaring my own guest. Downstairs, the mood was tense. Giya sat curled up on the side of the room, holding a cat close to her, clearly shaken. Her friend Donna finally asked me directly, what exactly had I seen? I told the story again, leaving out anything about my own past, since that wasn't something I discussed with others, just describing what I'd witnessed near the bed. Donna was quiet for a moment, then told me plainly, this wasn't a dream. This entity had been tormenting Giya for 15 years. There had been other presences before, she said, attached to the family for different reasons, but most of those had eventually been dealt with. This one particular entity, though, had never left. I asked what the story behind it was, had I really seen something real? Donna confirmed it. She said Giya's own husband had seen the exact same thing, the same description, the unnervingly tall figure, the veiled red eyes. Then Donna explained the background. Giya's family came from Indonesia. Her grandparents, her mother's parents, had practiced black magic. According to old family tradition, the eldest daughter in each generation was meant to inherit that practice, passed down deliberately. But Giya's mother had broken from that path entirely. She married a Muslim man of her own choosing, against the family's wishes. Giya, her firstborn daughter, should have been the one to inherit the practice instead, but never did. Giya's mother died young, of cancer, and Giya herself believed, though this remained her own personal conviction, not something anyone could verify, that the same entity had been responsible. After her mother's passing, Donna said, the entity's focus shifted to Giya. Giya eventually married a Muslim man too, and over time the rest of the family converted as well. They'd sought treatment, spiritual and otherwise, over the years. Most of the other forces tied to the family's past had faded. But this one entity, alone, had refused to leave. According to Giya, it had caused 8 miscarriages over the years, 8, with no medical explanation behind any of them. Every pregnancy ended in the first trimester, every time, with doctors finding nothing physically wrong. That was the whole story, as it was told to me that day. Giya stayed with me for 2 more nights after that. I did exactly what my father had instructed, the recitations, directed at the space around the bed, every night, just as he'd said. After those 2 nights, she moved into the 11th floor flat permanently, sharing it with her cousin Donna and another friend who already understood the history between them. Eventually the original tenant left, and Giya simply stayed on. And right now, as I tell you this, I'm sitting about a foot away from that very same bed, in that very same room, where I saw it.